The Michigan Wolverines take on the USC Trojans this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Michigan will travel across multiple time zones and face USC coming off a bye. Both teams are 4-1. Michigan's ranked 15th. USC is unranked for some reason. I think they should be ranked inside, honestly, the top 25, top 20 possibly. And from a analytics standpoint, they should certainly be ranked where Michigan is. Both should be ranked inside the top 15 if you're looking solely at analytics. Before I continue, liking the video, watching the video all the way through, and commenting your thoughts down below are the best ways to support the channel, as they help push me into the algorithm, help me to receive a larger paycheck that I can use to reinvest in producing elite analysis for you all. Subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell, sharing the video around, and supporting us in other ways that you can find out via the description are other awesome ways to support our operation at College Football with Sam. We are becoming the best. We want to be the best. Thank you all for making that possible. This is going to be a battle of styles here, and it will be a tough task for Michigan to overcome the trip and overcome USC having an additional week of preparation. It will be tough for USC to overcome Michigan's Big Ten style advantage, where Michigan has a better defense. Michigan is good enough offensively to create issues for USC's defense, and Michigan, in theory, should be the superior team in the trenches. There's a lot to unpack here between these two teams that I will argue are still college football playoff contenders. I say that especially with USC. A lot of people have already written them off, but they still are college football playoff contenders. Michigan, I think, is right now in the driver's seat for being a college football playoff contender. They'll be favored in the remaining games they play in, except for the Ohio State game, and they won't be more than a touchdown underdog against Ohio State. They're only a 2.5-point underdog here to USC, and that's with it being at night, with the trip, and with it being in the Coliseum, and with USC coming off a bye. So the books here view Michigan as the superior team, neutral field. They just have a lot to overcome here, and USC is still a good team. Let's talk about Michigan here at first. Michigan is the visiting team. USC's playing a host. We'll get to USC later. And Michigan, I think also because they're the ranked team and because of the fact that it's Sherrone Moore's second year and Lincoln Riley's fourth year, I think there's more intrigue around Michigan, and there's a lot more urgency and a lot more tension with USC. So we'll save the climax for the end, and that's USC. With Michigan, their loss to Oklahoma is aging as best as it possibly could. Oklahoma isn't allowing anyone to do anything offensively. They are killing teams with their defense, a defense that is number one in a variety of metrics. Let me list off the metrics that they are number one in, the Oklahoma Sooners. Adjusted EPA per play, EPA per play, yards allowed per play, success rate allowed, only allowing a 23.2% success rate from their opponents. Expected points added per drop back. Havoc percentage, they're third, 18.5%, only trailing Indiana, who I would say at this point is a top 5 defense, and only trailing Duke. And what is Manny Diaz known for? Causing havoc, causing pressure, blitzing. And that was with Underwood playing his first road start in a night game as a true freshman. Michigan had opportunities to win. Oklahoma dominated, yes, but Michigan kept it respectable and had some good moments there, though not many. Against New Mexico and Central Michigan, they handily beat their bad opponents. They game-controlled Wisconsin, although it was not a pretty win, and they beat Nebraska on the road. Again, game-controlled them, especially in the second half, but it was not a pretty win. USC analytically is better than any of these teams outside of maybe Oklahoma that Michigan's played thus far. In fact, according to FPI, Michigan is a better team than Oklahoma, and USC is a better team than Michigan. We'll find out if FPI is correct or not, depending on how this result goes. But this is going to be a tough challenge and a tall task for the Michigan Wolverines for a variety of reasons here. USC's weakness, at least their most obvious weakness, is defensive back. Now, their D-line has not looked all that bright either, but they at least have depth there. They at least have size, and I like their defensive ends and love their linebacker, Eric Gentry. However, outside of Kamari Ramsey and Bishop Fitzgerald, I don't really like what they have at secondary. And the depth situation there is catastrophically bad, and that's probably putting it kindly. Michigan is not a consistent passing offense, though. So unlike Illinois and, say, in Indiana or in Ohio State or in Oregon, who could work, they could work that USC secondary. Michigan drops the football enough with their wide receivers to where I don't know. I don't know if they're going to work this USC defense through the air in that way. And I think Lynn's a good enough coordinator. I think he's actually a great coordinator. And he has good enough safeties when healthy, and Ramsey should be back after that food poisoning bout against Illinois. And great enough linebackers and enough size in the D-line to where they should be able to stack the box and force Michigan to throw. And if you can force Michigan to throw, you can force a few punts out of them. And maybe a few is putting that a little too kindly for the Wolverines. Their rushing offense, I mean, they're averaging 7.7. They're averaging 6.6 yards per carry. That's only 1.1 fewer yards than they earn per pass attempt. I mean, 7.7 yards per pass attempt is not bad by any means, but 6.6 yards per rushing attempt per carry, that's crazy. And a lot of it's on big runs. Michigan is not awesome at power rushing. They're good. They've improved there. They're not fantastic there, though. They're not as good as they were from 21 to 23 in that category. But Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall have home run capability, and their offensive line is clearly better than it was last year, both in pass protection and in run blocking. Really does help when you have an effective quarterback, to be fair. And Bryce Underwood is right now one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football. He will be playing against one of the few quarterbacks who right now is better than him in Jayden Maiava. The Big Ten actually has a lot of those. The Big Ten, I think, is the conference of quarterbacks this year. You won't run on Michigan. You can get them through the air at times. And it's the same thing with their offense. They are a run-centric offense and run-stuff-centric defense. Oklahoma, even with Mateer's legs, didn't run on them extremely well. Obviously, the inferior opponent struggled to run on them. Nebraska couldn't run on them outside of the first quarter, and that was the same thing with Wisconsin. Really, after your scripted drives, it's very hard to run on this defense. Extremely challenging to run on them. They're going to be playing a USC rushing offense that is averaging around 7 yards per carry. One of the best in America there. That's the offense they're going to be playing. And an offense that is clearly, per the efficiency metrics, if you want to look at game on paper, the adjusted expected points added per play, USC's number one there. They are. When you look at adjusted EPA per play, they're number one by a mile. When you just look at solely EPA per play, still number one by a mile, and they average 7.03 yards per carry. Michigan averages 6.6. So these are two amazing, high potential, potent rushing offenses that you're going to see here. For Michigan, I'm looking at Jaishawn Barham, Trey Pierce, Rayshawn Benny, Ano Etta. I am looking at Derek Moore, TJ Guy. What does that defensive line do against a USC offensive line that should have Elijah Page back? Elijah Page is USC's best tackle, missed the Illinois game, big part of the reason why that offensive line didn't look so good. Do they get Killian O'Connor back, their center? And what happens with Jacoby Lane? Is Jacoby Lane finally healthy? Or is he still very limited and is really without a shoulder? As I suspect his injury is shoulder-related based on just how he played in that game, the fact that when he caught passes, he wasn't throwing them back, he was handing them off. Because Michigan's secondary can be got, but if you really only have one target, they're talented enough and good enough there, and I think this will especially be the case as Rod Moore continues to get healthy, to where they can lock down one receiver. They can do that. So they have a massive test here. And Michigan's been pretty bad on scripted drives. So Oklahoma, first drive, touchdown. Wisconsin, first drive, touchdown. Nebraska, first drive, only ends in not getting points because I think Rule wanted to get too greedy, although I think he was right to go on the fourth down there. The reason I say too greedy is a shovel pass? Serious? Like, what are you doing? Like, have your quarterback pass it downfield, run downfield, because with scripted drives, teams have some success running against Michigan's defense early on. Like, do something different. Michigan has not been a great early defense. You can pounce on them and get points on them early. They're better. They get better as the game goes on. So Martindale, his best halves have been second half Oklahoma, second half Wisconsin, really after the first quarter against Wisconsin, but still second half was better than first half. And second half against Nebraska, they only allowed 10 points, and 7 of those came after Michigan was up by 10, and Nebraska was going to need an onside kick to win. You get the point. If you're Michigan, you need to travel well. You need to come out on fire. You need to, out of the gate, establish that you have traveled well, that you take USC seriously, and you need to test their fortitude in the trenches, because Illinois dominated them in the trenches. And Michigan is a better team than Illinois. They have the better O-line, the better D-line, better defense overall. They have the better tight ends. Their receiver one and Donovan McCulley probably isn't that much worse than Illinois' receiver one. Maybe he's even better. And Luke Altmaier is better than Underwood for now, but Underwood's more talented, for example. And Michigan as a team overall is more talented than Illinois. So come out, run at them, and try your best to get pressure on the quarterback and, make Maiava throw to beat you early. And make him throw all day behind an offensive line that I think is better than USC's last year, at least in terms of how it fits with Riley's offense, but is not perfect. They're not exactly deep there, so try to wear on them and lean on them. If you are Michigan, what you should be concerned about is that, look, USC's favored, and the reason they're favored is because they have better athletes than you on the outside, so receiver. Makai Lemon would easily be Michigan's wide receiver one. Same with Jacoby Lane. They have 2 tight ends in Lake McCree and Walker Lyons, who are USC's best tight ends in quite some time. They can block their weapons downfield. They will test your linebackers and they will test your safeties. They have multiple options to get the football to. Jordan has breakaway speed, good ability to bust through some tackles, and they're deep there with backup Eli Sanders being a great running back too. Maiava can pull it. He can run. He's mobile, has great pocket presence, and he can layer his throws and fit the ball in the tight windows, get it over defenders' heads and right into the breadbasket that is his receiver's arms, and he has wonderful chemistry with Lemon. USC's defense, meanwhile, we've already talked about it. Their weakness ultimately is pass defense. They're just better athletically up front. And we've already talked about that Michigan's rushing attack is dominant because it's explosive. It's not dominant because they always get 4 or 5 yards per carry on you, like the 2023 Michigan unit did. So USC's probably going to force some punts here, and USC's offense, if healthy, is a unit that could give Michigan issues in forcing even 2 or 3 punts on that USC defense. I mean, there's a world here where USC doesn't punt at all against Michigan, and their only missed opportunities are a turnover or a missed field goal or a failed fourth down here or there. That's how efficient this USC offense is. That's how effective they are. And speaking of the Trojans, if you're USC, what you want Michigan to attack the trenches early. I think that's what both teams should want. But if you're USC, you want to hold up. If you're Michigan, you don't want them to hold up. I think both of these teams want to see the same thing out of their. They want to attack the same matchup early, but they want to have different outcomes and they want to play off of that in different ways. So I think if you're USC and the trenches are attacked early, but you can hold up, well, you should throw and run, of course, to keep Michigan honest, see if you can run them. But more likely than not, it will be a problem. and it will be much easier to pass on them. Michigan's defenders, especially in the backfield, have some discipline issues. They're younger there, take some bad angles. They're talented, and with Rod Moore healthy and Yair, Hill, and Barry only gaining more experience, they'll continue to get better. But Lemon, I think, is a bad matchup for any of those defensive backs. And same thing with Jacoby Lane if he's healthy. Defensively, you want Michigan to challenge the trenches, but you want Michigan's offense to look how it's looked in its first 5 games, to where they'll score some points on you because your defense isn't perfect. You don't have the players that you want if you're D'Anton Lynn and Eric Henderson and Lincoln Riley and Bowden, the general manager. But if you force them to punt enough times, you can score. You can just outscore them, and you can overwhelm them and make Michigan abandon some things that are core pieces of their identity, such as, running the football, for example. That's what you can do here. And I know they lost to Illinois and looked pretty bad in doing so, but they had plenty of injuries there, and this is a team that is great when they're healthy, could even be near elite or flirting with elite when healthy. They are very thin, though. They are one of college football's thinnest teams, I would say. And by that, I mean their drop-off from starter to backup is among the most severe in college football. I mean, the drop-off is obvious. Even individual player to individual player drop-off can bring down the entire unit. They are that thin. They can't afford injuries here. And that was early kickoff, multiple time zone travel. You were thin. You had last-minute news that one of your best defensive players, maybe your best in Kamari Ramsey, is hurt. Your best tackle is dead. And Illinois came out and they played mad, and maybe their best game of the year outside of the fumbles. And that could just be who they are. Their best game includes some mistakes. So I hold that against them in a certain way, but also I really don't, the more I get away from that game. This is a team that can beat everyone on their schedule sans Oregon, because I think Oregon's that good. It's on the road, and they can do what USC wants to do, but better because they're deeper. And also their quarterback's more talented, and Decorian Moore is probably just as talented as Makai Lemon is. He just doesn't have the necessary experience yet. Could even be more talented. We'll have to see. But I love Makai Lemon, love Jacoby Lane, the tight ends that USC has. This is a impressive team, for sure. I believe that the weaknesses here for USC play into Michigan's hands to a certain degree, but they're at home. They're coming off a bye. They have a wonderful QB wide receiver connection, and their strengths play against Michigan's weaknesses. So really what this game is going to come down to is who is better at exploiting the key weakness that these rosters match up well against. This isn't a game where these are two teams that, they're built so similarly where it's just going to be who's better or who plays better that day. Maybe not even who is better. But, or it's not going to be a game where these are two teams where they are different, but their strengths don't match up well with the opponent's weakness on both sides. So it's, an ugly, weird game, or it's a game where, again, with the prior example, it's just who plays better that day. This is a game where given how Wink Martindale on opening drives is not awesome, and Lincoln Riley with a week to prepare with this offense is going to be as awesome as they can be, given how the 4-2-5 Ravens defense that Michigan runs, they like to bunch up at the lines of scrimmage. They like to show a lot of pressure and then back out of it. They like to play off cover with their corners, and Riley will love those screens. He'll love that play action. He'll love picking apart Michigan with 1,000 paper cuts. And given how USC, I don't think against a competent rushing attack can stop a nosebleed. I don't think they can. Yeah, they have, and if you're a USC fan, don't take offense to this. They have size, and that matters. That's a good thing they have that they didn't last year. It's not translating, though. Keyshawn Silver was bad at Kentucky. Didn't translate here. Just didn't. Bear Alexander, look, he's playing well for Oregon, but he was not good at USC. I do not blame USC for letting him go. He wasn't playing well there. And I don't think he's Oregon's best defensive tackle still. That goes to Amari Washington. And given how Penn State's offensive line has looked, I don't know. I probably overrated that unit for the entire preseason. So they are making progress, but this is a Michigan running back room that has speed, elusiveness. They don't fumble the football. They have great ball carrier vision, and they can hit the hole, and they can bust some tackles, and they can stiff arm you, and they can get yards after contact. They can do it all. And it's an offensive line that isn't perfect, but is getting better as the year goes on, is better than the unit was last year. And when they bring in tight ends and they're disciplined, they will make you pay. So that's not a good matchup for USC either. Michigan, in theory here, should be able to run for over 200 yards as long as the game doesn't get out of hand early. So again, back to the point that I was making here. This is a game that will be decided by who can better exploit their opponent's weakness. Because both teams have massive advantages that they can utilize, that they can pinpoint, that they can surgically pick apart. And I honestly, let's be real here, guys. Who's the better coach, Lincoln Riley or Sherrone Moore? And after you answer Lincoln Riley, because that's the only honest answer one could give right now, a bye week is going to only enhance that further. It's only going to. I think Michigan's actually the better team here. And that's why they're only 2.5-point underdogs, despite having the travel, USC having the bye, and USC being at home. Neutral field, Michigan would be favored by 1.5, maybe even 2.5 themselves. If Michigan were at home, this would probably be above a field goal point spread in their favor. And Michigan would be confidently viewed by the books as the victor if they were to host USC. I think with the bye, with the fact that, look, USC, I do think is slightly inferior to Michigan, but not inferior enough to where it's going to cover up the coaching advantage and home field advantage and the potential jet lag that Michigan is going up against. So I think that USC is going to win here. I think they're going to win in a very close game, and they're going to cover. They're going to win by anywhere from, I think, 3 to 10 points. It could be a game where USC wins by double digits just because they're able to score and Michigan isn't, and they pull ahead early or maybe pull ahead late. Michigan, I think, should win, looking at the fact that they'll control the lines of scrimmage here, and they are the better overall team. And I think that if this game were played later in the year, but same location, I think Michigan would win. I think Michigan has a lot more room to grow because they're deeper than USC is, and they are more talented, and I think they're more talented at the positions that matter the most. So trenches, quarterback, receivers, the only area that I think really matters the most that USC's more talented in. I mean, Michigan's more talented at DB, like factoring in corner, nickel, and safety. If you're only looking at safety, Bishop Fitzgerald and Kamari Ramsey have been fantastic there. I'm picking USC to win, to cover. I think it's going to be a bounce-back game. It'll be close, and I think at the end of the game, you'll be saying to yourself that Michigan is the better team, but USC was just better able to take advantage of those matchups. They made the better coaching decisions, and they just had a home field and travel advantage that, much like how all that played in Illinois' favor and allowed them to win close, this time these factors will play into USC's favor and allow them to win close. If I'm wrong, the most likely outcome of me being wrong is that Michigan straight up wins here. I think that they're the better team. I also could be wrong on that venture, but looking at the trends where these teams started out and where they've been going ever since, I think that Michigan's a bit steadier. They're better able to respond to injuries, and they have more room to grow. And USC is just another injury away from being what they were against Illinois, and not who I think they will be in this game when they're healthier, which is, surprisingly, when healthy and when depth isn't a massive factor, one of the better teams in all of college football. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure, if you haven't already, to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment your analysis and thoughts down below so I can reciprocate my thoughts with you in the comment section. and check out anything on these end screens that are up here, whether it's a recommended video or playlists for teams that I'm talking about in a preview, prediction, or a reaction. Make sure to hit the notification bell on those, scroll through them, and watch any suggested videos if you are interested. Thank you for helping college football with Sam become the best and the biggest college football brand and channel on YouTube and other social media platforms. We will reach that one day because of your support.